We can actually start off, Rich, with our history and how we met. I'd like to.
That's like interesting. Let's hear the story. Let's hear the story, Rich.
Yeah.
I see a smirk
off, or you want me to?
I see a smirk on Rich's face, so I think this is going to be a good story.
So not a lot of people know, but when we opened up Hampton Jiu Jitsu in 2016 here in Southampton, just in a random class one day, Rich was driving by. He sees Hampton Jiu Jitsu on the sign, and pulls in. And what happens from there?
Well, you need the context, which is. I've been running the real Hampton Jiu Jitsu for many years before Greg opened his building in my basement.
Oh, so wait, was there some like copyright issue going on here?
Yeah, well that was in his basement in Southampton.
I had to change the name to like Byrne Jiu Jitsu from Hampton, but it's in my basement, and I'm just always recruiting people. Anybody that I can find that will come and train, or people we import from the city or whatnot. And then one day, there's a big sign, Hampton Jiu Jitsu. Drove by, I said, you gotta be kidding me. And then the next day, I wanted to try it out, but it was a beautiful, perfect day, and I went paddleboarding instead. Because, those nice sunny windless days, I want to go. So I figured, look, I go paddleboarding. So I went paddleboarding, and unfortunately, during my paddleboarding trip, it was like May. And that's like, I don't know, mothering season for like the birds or something. And I ran into a swan that kicked my ass. Now you think
you should have brought it to your Hampton Jiu Jitsu in your basement, and you should have brought the swan there.
Well, you think of swans as these nice, calm, pretty, beautiful animals. This was a mad, badass swan. Kept chasing me, knocked me off my board, almost drowned me. Water's freezing. A guy rescued me. I'm soaking wet, but I still was committed to come over to Hampton Jiu Jitsu. So I showed up. I said, I met Greg, and I introduced myself, and he says, like, why are you soaking wet?
Why do you have swan feathers?
Came in.
Why do you have swan feathers in your rash guard?
He came in. He's like, hey, my name's Rich. I'm a black belt from the city. Oh, yeah, she's got this paddleboard incident. So this was like my first intro. Yeah, so
Greg was nice enough. He didn't have a gi yet at the time, but he let me a rash guard. It was a gi class. But I convinced a couple of the guys to go no gi, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah, so that's kind of that was like the first intro of meeting Professor Rich Byrne, and coming in, that was kind of the wave of Rich bringing out all these amazing guys to our academy. I mean, once Eddie Cummings stepped in our door and it basically just wiped the floor with all of us old school guys, we kind of were like, all right, we got to open up our minds. And
but we've had a lot of people out here visiting.
Yeah, we've had Eddie Cummings,
Gianni, the Meows,
Johnny Whippo, the Meows,
Mateus Lutes.
We got them all on the wall here. There's like way too many to name.
Lots of people. Tex,
and then who else? I'm trying to think, but either way, that was kind of a huge thing for us at Hampton Jiu Jitsu, because the whole idea of us out here was to not put up a team flag, and it was to be open to any and all different styles and a conglomerate.
You've trained with a ton of people, right? You've trained with Danaher. You've trained with Eddie Bravo, correct?
No. Eddie Cummings.
Eddie Cummings. Eddie Cummings.
Right. It was an Eddie.
It was an Eddie. Sorry, wrong Eddie.
So on that note, your history and how you got started, it was actually the owners of the UFC. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's. I've told the story before, so I know you've heard it. But I was a runner, and I was always in shape. I'm maniacal about staying in shape, and I hurt my hip. I had a labral tear in my hip. And
that feeling.
Run. We just talked about that.
Yep.
And I needed another sport, and we were doing some transactions with Frank and Lorenzo.
Okay.
For TITA. It wasn't even for UFC. This is for Station Casinos, the company that we banked. I've been their banker for years, and we were discussing Station Casinos, and we were talking. They were doing a leverage buyout at the time. It was about 15 years ago, and they needed some more equity into the deal, or we were discussing and said, well, we own this other company called UFC. Maybe we can contribute that as part of the deal. And I said, what's a UFC? and I swear to goodness.
What year was this? What year was this for context?
About 15 years ago.
About 15 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. So I thought UFC, I swear, was United Furniture Company. Because I knew of a company called United Furniture Company. I just said, anyway, no, they told me it's Ultimate Fighting. So I started watching it and I got hooked. It was awesome. So I started watching. I became like the biggest fan. I said, oh, you got to teach me how to do something. Well, Rich, you need something to do for workouts because I was swimming. I was getting bored sick. So they hooked me up with a kickboxing instructor, which I loved, Phil Nurse in New York. Great, but he beat the crap out of me. Even just the hitting pads I was using black and blue marks all over. And I think it's like a little bit of a younger man sport if you're learning it. And then they said, well, you think Frank kidding around literally says to Lorenzo, you think he's ready? And Dana White was there too because we were working on it. And I said, what do you mean? You think I'm ready? He says, you think he's ready for jiu-jitsu? And they go, nah, he's a pussy. So what? What do you mean?
You're like, okay, challenge accepted. You just called me a pussy, right?
And they said, do you know what jiu-jitsu is? I said, yeah, I've been watching UFC. It's when they go to the ground. And everybody gets bored and they want them to stand up. But that looks like the category killer. Like I'm thinking Hoist Gracie and they said, okay, we'll set you up. So they set me up with John Danaher. No, I'm sorry. Back up. They set me up with Henzo.
As your first jiu-jitsu
My first lesson ever. So I came into Henzo Gracie Academy and I said, hi, my name is Rich. I'm here. I have a lesson set up. Oh, you're the guy. Henzo drove in from New Jersey just to do this one private with me. So he does the private and Henzo's awesome. He and I became friends like for life, on that day. But the only problem was I don't think he was going to come to New Jersey a couple times a week to train jiu-jitsu. So I got passed around to different guys. And I saw John Danaher in the corner. So sorry if the story is going on too long.
No. It's
but this is still that long ago now.
This is 15 years ago. So John is this nondescript guy. He had hair back then. Just had a big bald spot in the back. But John was in the back. Didn't look like he was very approachable. But he sat in the back and he trained Matt Serra.
Okay.
And Matt Serra at the time, this is before he won the Ultimate Fighter and all that. Right. But he was known, at least what I had watched, as like the best jiu-jitsu guy in the UFC at that time. Yep. Maybe today it would be too. He's great at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, he was probably the highest level black belt fighter in the UFC at that point, Matt Serra.
And then Matt Serra has this big fight coming up, the finals of that Ultimate Fighter coming around that. Right. Might have been a different fight, but he has coming up. He's the best fighter in the UFC in jiu-jitsu, and his coach is John Danaher. I was like, wait, the guy is the best jiu-jitsu fighter in the UFC. This guy is his coach. I want him to be my coach.
Yeah.
Right? So, but then I watched the lesson that John had with Matt Serra, and John just beat the living crap out of Matt Serra. And I'm thinking to myself two things. One is, not only is he the coach of the best guy in the UFC, but he could beat the best guy in the UFC. And even better than that is I love the way his mind works, that he's not letting Matt Serra win the week before his fight. He's still beating him. That's my kind of guy.
Domination.
So I went over and I introduced myself to John, who I don't think John would normally take on a 40-something-year-old white belt like me. But John saw me come in the day that Henzo did my lesson, and he said, oh, he must be some kind of VIP. Maybe I'll take him on. And, then John and I did privates together for about, 3 years. And I learned all my fundamentals from John.
That's amazing.
Everything. And became super close, and he's like one of the best guys in the world.
That's amazing. I mean, how many people can say they have that kind of a history in starting jiu-jitsu? Right?
Starting with the UFC almost, right? Yeah. UFC pushing you to your first jiu-jitsu coach. Most of us Google it and find jiu-jitsu. That's how you do that.
And then be introduced by the Tito brothers. And them setting you up with Henzo Gracie.
By the way, we ended up raising all of the capital that before Fertitta sold. We did all of their financing. We did it.
Before they sold the UFC.
Well, now they don't own it anymore. But when they did own it, we did all of their financing.
Wow. That's amazing.
So I got front row seats at a lot of fights.
That's awesome.
Oh, man. That's awesome. On top of that. So now, next question for you. So now, currently, fast forward years later, owner of the shirt here, Mushin Martial Arts, that's in the city.
Yep.
And bunch of great guys from there. They drop into Hampton Jiu-Jitsu all the time. And then from there, after our post-Swan meeting and training out here, what was the motivation and how did it all come about for Kasai to start? And what was the whole?
So Kasai is really a passion project, a labor of love, right?
Yep.
So I've been watching jiu-jitsu, and it just, look, I'm as fanatical about jiu-jitsu as anybody, as are most of the people I hang out with. Yet all of us can't even watch for more than a short period of time, a lot of the IBJJF matches because they're just too boring. So, wow, with all this sport has, and watching how maniacal fans are about watching UFC, and jiu-jitsu is so much more technical. There's not the blood element, maybe, but can't we turn it into can you professionally run with all those great production values that something like UFC does? Can you take some of the greatest athletes in the world and turn that into something of the scale? I mean, it'll never be what mixed martial arts is for obvious reasons, but can you make it into something? Can you elevate the platform? And that was how we thought about it, is can you elevate the sport that we love so much? And also the thing that made me sad is, without naming names, but some of the best, most talented jiu-jitsu fighters in the world become MMA fighters. Why? They learn jiu-jitsu when they're, young kids. They never learned how to box or kickbox, but they learned it later. So their skill level at kickboxing compared to their skill level at jiu-jitsu is here versus here.
Right.
But they did, and so they're never going to be as good as they are in jiu-jitsu in that world as they are in this world, but they do it because of the money.
Right.
And it's just sad to me. So, is there a way to give them a way to make a living doing jiu-jitsu? Give them the crowds. Like for any of you who have ever been or watched our Kasai tournaments, like many of our biggest shows are in the Manhattan Center in New York City. Manhattan Center is a professional venue. That's a real place. That's where they have giant concerts, giant bands play there. I mean, and we put the stage in the center and then the crowd around it with the balconies. I mean, your name gets announced. I talked to people that have fought, for a decade. They said I never had chills like I had, when you call my name and I walk down that
music,
the music, the smoke, the everything. It elevates the sport to a different level, and that's really what we want.
And that's really, I mean, that's sort of why so many of them went into mixed martial arts, right? It's, there's where their revenue streams, right? You have to make money to live. Let's face it. So unfortunately, but what you're doing with Kasai, it's a totally different, it's a game changer for them.
Yeah, no, definitely.